The living room felt tight and uncomfortable as I looked at my mother, Sophia, and my younger sister, Evelyn. Evelyn had just announced that she and her husband, Alex, needed a place to stay because they were going through some tough times. My mom's face lit up with excitement, almost like a kid opening gifts on Christmas morning. "Of course, you two can stay here," Sophia said happily, wrapping Evelyn in a big, welcoming hug. "We'll make room for you, no problem." My heart sank. This was our home, a small, two-bedroom house that I had worked so hard to keep up. But, as always, my own needs seemed to come last. Trying to keep calm, I said, "Mom, can I talk to you for minutes?" I didn't want to sound upset, but it was hard to hide it. Without even looking at me, Sophia waved her hand dismissively. "Not now, Harper. We need to get the guest room ready for Evelyn and Alex," she said. Evelyn shot me a smug smile, clearly enjoying how she was getting all the attention. My fists clenched as anger bubbled up inside me. "This isn't just your decision," I said, raising my voice slightly. "I live here too, and I don't agree with them moving in without discussing it first." Sophia's face hardened as she turned toward me. "Watch your tone, young lady," she warned. "Evelyn is family, and family comes first." "But what about me?" I asked, my voice cracking with hurt. "I've sacrificed so much to keep this household running, and you treat me like I'm just in the way." Sophia's eyes narrowed as she stepped closer, pointing her finger at me in an accusing way. "If you can't accept your sister's situation, then maybe you should find somewhere else to live." Her words hit me like a slap across the face. I saw Evelyn smirking behind her hand, clearly enjoying the drama she had stirred up. "Fine, Mom," I said, my voice shaking with both anger and pain. "Maybe I will." Without waiting for a response, I turned and stormed out of the living room, feeling hot tears welling up in my eyes. I had finally reached my breaking point. I went to my room, pacing back and forth as the tears streamed down my cheeks. How could my mom be so heartless? After everything I had done to keep our household going, she was pushing me aside to make room for Evelyn and her husband, who never seemed to hold down a job. A knock on the door interrupted my spiraling thoughts. It was Mom's voice on the other side, sounding irritated. "Harper, we need to talk about this." I threw open the door, glaring at her. "Talk about what?" "About how you're replacing me with your favorite daughter?" My mom's face grew stern. "Don't be so dramatic. Evelyn and Alex are going through a tough time, and they need our help." "Our help?" I scoffed, crossing my arms. "More like my help. I'm the one who's been paying half the bills around here, while Evelyn just drifts around, taking advantage of everyone." "Watch your mouth," Mom snapped, her tone sharp. "Evelyn is going through a difficult time. The least you could do is show some compassion." I let out a bitter laugh. "Compassion? That's rich coming from you. When was the last time you showed me any compassion?" Mom's eyes narrowed, and her face hardened. "You ungrateful brat. After everything I've done for you, everything you've done for me?" I shot back, my voice rising. "All you do is criticize me, put me down, and favor Evelyn no matter what she does. That's enough," Mom shouted, her face turning red with anger. "I won't have you talking to me like that in my own house." "Your house?" I retorted. "I've been the one holding this place together with my paychecks, while you bend over backward to please Evelyn." Mom's face twisted in anger. "If you can't show your sister some basic kindness, then maybe it's time you found your own place." Her words hit me so hard, it felt like all the air had been knocked out of my lungs. "You're kicking me out?" I asked, barely able to breathe. "If that's what it takes for you to learn some respect," Mom said coldly. In that moment, something inside me snapped. "Fine," I said, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. "I'll leave. But don't come crawling back to me when Evelyn and her deadbeat husband bleed you dry. Mom's eyes widened in surprise, but before she could respond, I slammed the door in her face. Hot tears ran down my cheeks as I realized I'd finally had enough. My cheeks were wet with tears as I sank to the floor, my world feeling like it was collapsing after the explosive fight with Mom. I knew there was no turning back now. I had to move out, start fresh, and leave the toxic environment of my family behind. As much as it hurt, I couldn't keep subjecting myself to their cruelty and favoritism. I picked up my phone and called my best friend, Nora, trying my hardest to hold back more tears. "Hey, I need a huge favor," I began, my voice shaky. "Can I crash at your place for a little while?" Nora's voice came through the line, full of concern. "Of course, Harper. What's going on?" "It's a long story," I said, taking a deep, trembling breath. "I'll explain everything when I get there. Is it okay if I come over tonight?" "Absolutely," Nora replied without missing a beat. "My door is always open for you." With Nora's comforting words in mind, I started packing up my things. It was a painful process, sorting through the pieces of my life in this house. The home I had worked so hard to keep going, only to be tossed aside like I was nothing. As I folded clothes and boxed up my personal items, memories flooded my mind. I thought about all the times I had sacrificed to make things run smoothly around here, the birthdays and holidays where my efforts were overlooked while Evelyn soaked up all of Mom's attention. Tears burned in my eyes, but I forced myself to blink them away. I couldn't fall apart now. I had to stay strong and carve out a new life, far away from the suffocating family dynamics that had kept me trapped for so long. A knock on my bedroom door startled me. "Harper, it's Alex," came the voice of Evelyn's husband. I tensed up immediately, dreading whatever he had to say. I knew all too well his smooth-talking and manipulation tactics. "What do you want?" I called out, my voice sharp. "Can we talk?" Alex asked, his tone overly calm and gentle. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." I scoffed and yanked the door open, glaring at him. "The only misunderstanding here is you two thinking you can just show up and take over my life." Alex held up his hands, trying to look harmless. "I get that this is a tough situation, but we really need your help right now. Evelyn and I are going through some rough times." "Rough times you brought on yourselves," I shot back, my anger surging. "Don't try to guilt me into enabling your irresponsible behavior." Alex's expression hardened. "Watch your tone, Harper. We're family, and family should support each other." I laughed bitterly. "Yeah? Tell that to Mom and Evelyn. They've made it pretty clear where I stand in this family." Before Alex could respond, I pushed past him, dragging my packed suitcase behind me. "I'm done with all of you. Don't even try to reel me back in." As I stepped out into the cool evening air, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in what felt like ages, I felt a small glimmer of hope for a future where I wouldn't be constantly belittled or taken for granted. When I arrived at Nora's apartment, she greeted me with a warm hug, taking my suitcase and guiding me inside. "I'm so sorry you're going through this, Harper," she said, her eyes filled with empathy. I gave her a weak smile, swallowing down another wave of tears. "Thank you for letting me stay. I just couldn't be around them anymore." Nora led me to her cozy living room, which felt like a safe haven compared to the tense, stifling atmosphere of my family home. "Make yourself at home," she said, gesturing to her plush couch. "Can I get you something to drink? Maybe a glass of wine?" I shook my head, sinking into the soft cushions. "Just some water would be great, thanks." As Nora went into the kitchen, I took a deep breath, allowing the reality of the past few hours to settle in. I was officially on my own, finally free from the toxic cycle that had drained me for so long. Nora came back with a glass of water and a warm, reassuring smile. Whenever you're ready, I'm here to listen. I nodded, taking a sip of the cool water before letting out a long breath. Finally, I began to tell her the whole tangled story, Mom's blatant favoritism, Evelyn's entitled attitude, and that final explosive argument that led to my eviction, I said, letting it all pour out to Nora. She listened with a furrowed brow, clearly upset on my behalf. I can't believe they treated you like that, Nora said, her voice filled with anger. You've done nothing but support that family, and they just tossed you aside like it was nothing. I know, I replied, my voice thick with emotion. As painful as it is, I just can't keep putting myself through that kind of hurt. Nora reached over, giving my hand a comforting squeeze. You're doing the right thing, Harper. It's time you started living for yourself. Her words resonated deeply, sparking a new determination within me. For so long, I had sacrificed my happiness and well-being for a family that didn't seem to appreciate me. But now, that chapter was finally closed. Over the next few days, I began settling into Nora's cozy spare bedroom. As I unpacked my belongings, it felt like I was uncovering parts of myself that had been buried under the weight of my family's expectations. Each item I put away seemed to free me a little bit more. I started exploring new interests, allowing myself to indulge in things I had always wanted to try. I joined a local book club, where I met people who shared my love of reading, and I even signed up for a beginner's pottery class. Pursuing activities just for my own enjoyment felt refreshing, like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. There was no one judging me, no one criticizing my choices. I was free to simply enjoy myself. At work, I dove into my projects with renewed energy, putting my ideas forward confidently and impressing my boss with my dedication. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment that wasn't tied to pleasing anyone but myself. I was finally starting to see my own worth, separate from my family's opinions. As days turned into weeks, I felt the weight of my past slowly lift, replaced by a sense of freedom I hadn't known before. For once, I was living for me, and the future looked brighter than ever. Then, a few weeks after I had moved in with Nora, my phone started ringing off the hook. Each time, it was either Mom or Evelyn, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails, begging me to pick up. I ignored them, not ready to reopen that chapter of my life. I had finally begun to heal, and I didn't want to risk getting pulled back into the drama. One evening, as Nora and I were catching up over takeout, my phone rang again. I rolled my eyes, ready to silence it, but Nora stopped me with a gentle but firm look. You should probably answer it, she said, giving me an encouraging nod. Maybe they finally have something important to say. With a heavy sigh, I picked up. What do you want, Mom? Harper, thank goodness. Mom's frantic voice came through the line, sounding strained and panicked. We're in big trouble here. A strange, bittersweet satisfaction settled in my chest at hearing the desperation in her tone. Oh, really? What's the matter? Can't handle things without me around? It's not just that, Mom said, her voice filled with tension. We're behind on the mortgage payments, and the utility companies are threatening to cut everything off. A dry, humorless laugh escaped my lips. Gee, I wonder how that happened. Maybe you shouldn't have kicked out the person who was actually helping with the bills. Harper, please, Mom pleaded, sounding desperate. We need your help. We're barely scraping by. I felt a dark sense of satisfaction at their situation. After years of feeling dismissed and underappreciated, it was almost gratifying to hear that the tables had finally turned. You know, Mom, this is exactly what I warned you about, I replied coldly. You chose Evelyn over me, and now you're dealing with the consequences. I made a mistake, okay? Mom's voice cracked, filled with emotion. I'm sorry for how I treated you. Just please help us out, just this one time. I could hear Evelyn's muffled sobs in the background, and a small part of me felt a twinge of sympathy. But the years of hurt ran too deep, and I knew I couldn't allow myself to be pulled back in. "Sorry, Mom," I said, my voice steely. "You told me to leave, and that's exactly what I did. Now it's your turn to figure things out on your own." With that, I ended the call, ignoring the flood of texts and voicemails that followed. I was done with them, and finally free. Nora looked at me, her expression filled with both concern and understanding. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. I nodded, letting out a deep breath. "Yeah, I'm fine," I said, a quiet strength in my voice. "It's just satisfying to finally see them reaping the consequences." "For once," I said to Nora, feeling a strange mix of liberation and lingering guilt, "I'm standing up for myself. They made their bed, and now they have to lie in it." Nora gave me a supportive smile. "You have every right to stand your ground, Harper. They need to face the consequences of their choices." As the weeks went by, Mom and Evelyn's calls became increasingly frantic. I learned that Alex had been hiding serious debts, which led to his job loss and worsened their financial situation. While a small part of me felt guilty for not stepping in to help, a stronger part of me understood that helping would only feed the dysfunction. Sometimes, the only way to truly break free is to let the consequences play out, painful as that might be. Over the next few months, I heard about how things back at my old home were spiraling out of control. Nora, who kept up with neighborhood gossip, filled me in on the details. The utilities had been shut off, debt collectors were constantly harassing them, and the yard that I had always kept neat was now overgrown and unkempt. A twisted sense of satisfaction flickered within me. After years of being treated like I was invisible in my own home, watching them experience the fallout felt like poetic justice. One evening, Nora came home from work with a concerned expression. "I saw your mom at the grocery store today," she said hesitantly, watching my reaction. She looked rough. I raised an eyebrow, unsure if I wanted to hear more. "Oh? How so?" Nora sighed, shaking her head. Her clothes were disheveled, her hair was a mess. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. For a moment, a flicker of guilt tugged at me, but I quickly pushed it down. "Well, maybe now she'll finally understand what it's like to struggle," I replied, trying to sound indifferent. Nora gave me a sympathetic look. "I know you're still hurting, Harper, but don't let their mistakes consume you. You've done so well moving forward. Don't let them drag you back." I nodded, taking her words to heart, though a small part of me couldn't help but savor their hardship. After years of neglect and mistreatment, it felt like the universe was finally setting things right. A few days later, my phone rang from an unfamiliar number. Against my better judgment, I picked up. "Hello," I answered cautiously. "Harper, it's Evelyn," a strained voice whispered on the other end. I could hear the exhaustion and fear in her tone. I felt a surge of bitterness rise within me. "What do you want, Evelyn?" I need your help," she choked out, her voice breaking. "Everything is falling apart, and I don't know what to do." I couldn't help but scoff. "Funny. That's exactly how I felt when you and Mom kicked me out like I didn't matter." I know," Evelyn sobbed, sounding desperate. "I was so wrong, Harper. Please, you have to help us. We're desperate." A twisted part of me relished in her anguish. This was the moment I had imagined countless times, the one where they would finally feel what I had felt. "Why should I help you, Evelyn?" I asked coldly. "You and Mom made it clear that I wasn't part of the family anymore." "Please, Harper," she begged, her voice trembling. "I'll do anything. I'm sorry for how we treated you. Just please, don't let us end up on the streets." I could hear the genuine desperation in her voice, and for a fleeting moment, I almost felt sympathy for her. Almost. You know what, Evelyn? I said, my voice cold and unyielding. This is exactly what you deserve. Maybe now, you'll finally know what it feels like to be left out in the cold. With that, I ended the call, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction wash over me. They had brought this on themselves, and I wasn't about to be their savior. As the weeks turned into months, I heard more about how things were deteriorating at my former home. Nora would occasionally fill me in on the latest updates, unpaid bills piling up, debt collectors showing up regularly, and even rumors of Evelyn and Alex turning to shady activities just to make ends meet. A part of me felt a dark satisfaction in watching their lives unravel after years of being treated like a second-class citizen in my own family. It felt like poetic justice to see my family face the consequences of their actions. But another part of me couldn't ignore a small ache of sorrow. As much as they had hurt me, they were still my family, and watching them spiral downward tugged at my heart. One evening, as Nora and I were catching up over a glass of wine, she gently brought up the topic. "Harper, I know you're still hurting from everything that happened," she said softly. "But don't you think it might be time to let go of some of that anger?" I sighed, swirling the wine in my glass. "I don't know, Nora. They put me through so much for so long. Part of me feels like they deserve every bit of it." Nora reached across the table, giving my hand a comforting squeeze. "I get it, believe me, I do. But holding on to that bitterness is only going to end up poisoning you in the end." Her words struck a chord. As satisfying as it had been to see my family crumble, I realized that harboring all that resentment might only keep me chained to the past. Was I really any better if I let the anger fester? The next day, while I was preparing for an important presentation at work, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from Mom. I hesitated, taking a moment before finally answering. "Hello," I said cautiously. "Harper," Mom's voice was barely a whisper, thick with emotion. I don't even know where to start. I steeled myself, preparing for excuses or another round of manipulation. But instead, Mom's voice softened further, punctuated by quiet sobs. "I'm so sorry, Harper," she said, her words trembling. "I was a terrible mother to you. You deserved so much better than what I gave you." I felt my resolve waver as she continued, genuinely taking responsibility for the pain she had caused me. "I know I can never undo what I did," she said, her voice full of remorse. "But please let me try. I'll do anything to earn your forgiveness." In that moment, something inside me shifted. As much as I had relished seeing them struggle, I suddenly understood that holding on to this bitterness was only hurting me. I took a deep breath, my voice softer than I intended. "Mom, I can't pretend like everything is okay between us. You really hurt me." "I know," she replied, her voice breaking. "And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me." Exhaling deeply, I felt a heavy weight lift as I began to let go of the resentment that had burdened me for so long. "Okay, Mom," I said finally. "Let's start over. One step at a time." It wouldn't be an easy road, but in that moment, I realized that true healing would come through forgiveness, not just for them, but for myself, too. After that emotional conversation, I felt hopeful about rebuilding our relationship, even if it would take time. Over the next few months, Mom made sincere efforts to make amends. She invited me over for weekly dinners, where she listened as I opened up about the years of pain and neglect I had endured. I could see genuine remorse in her eyes, and even though it was difficult, it felt healing to finally be heard. Evelyn and Alex, on the other hand, kept their distance. The last I heard, they had moved into a small apartment and were slowly getting back on their feet. A part of me still felt resentment toward them, but I knew that holding on to it would only hold me back. Meanwhile, I was thriving in my independence. At work, I took on a side project that allowed me to showcase my creativity and problem-solving skills. My boss was impressed with my dedication, and soon there were whispers of a promotion. In my personal life, I explored hobbies and interests I had neglected for far too long. I joined a local book club where I enjoyed lively discussions and the chance to explore new literary worlds. I even started a pottery class, finding peace and mindfulness in the simple act of shaping clay. Nora remained my unwavering support, cheering me on every step of the way. "I'm so proud of you, Harper," she told me one evening as we shared a bottle of wine on her balcony. "You've come such a long way." I smiled, feeling a warm glow from her words. "I couldn't have done it without you," I said gratefully. "You were there for me when my own family wasn't." As the months passed, I felt myself truly letting go of the past. The anger and resentment that had once consumed me faded, replaced by a newfound sense of self-worth and confidence. One evening, as I was getting ready to go out with some coworkers, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "I just wanted to let you know how proud I am of you, Harper. You've grown into such a strong, independent woman, and I'm honored to be a part of your life again." Tears stung my eyes as I read her message, but this time they weren't tears of pain or bitterness. They were tears of gratitude and healing. I had finally broken free from the toxic cycle that had held me back for so long. No longer was I defined by the neglect and mistreatment of my past. I was now forging my own path, surrounded by people who truly appreciated and supported me. As I stepped out into the warm evening air, a profound sense of peace washed over me. The journey had been long and difficult, but I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever. I was finally living for myself,